All right, it looks like it's 12 p.m., so welcome to everybody on the line to the Great Lakes Prevention Technology Transfer Center webinar on motivational interviewing for smoking cessation. This is part one of a two-part series, so at some point, if you can register for part two, there's a link off to your right to do that. Just a disclaimer that this webinar is not meant to prepare participants to deliver this evidence-based practice with fidelity. Learning MI is a developmental process that requires a long-term investment of time and effort. People learn best when they have repeated opportunities to practice learned skills and receive feedback on performance from experienced MI practitioners and to incorporate this feedback into practice. Just some housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded. A recording and the PowerPoint slides will be available on the Great Lakes Prevention Technology Transfer website. And this webinar does not include CEUs. Today's audio will be broadcast through your computer speakers. Make sure that they are turned up and on. So I'm seeing a couple questions about the audio. There are no call-in numbers available, so it is just broadcast through your computer speakers. And please use the chat function for questions throughout the webinar. And feel free to ask questions as they arise, and I'll communicate with our presenter today, Laura, to make sure that she's answering questions. And then we'll have an official Q&A after the presentation. And someone just commented too, some people find that earbuds help during to get your audio running so you can hear the presentation. So today's presenter is Laura Saunders. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but Laura and I are colleagues through the University of Wisconsin-Madison on the Great Lakes Addiction, Mental Health, and Prevention Technology Transfer Centers, and I'm the State Project Manager for Minnesota. I've worked with Laura on several occasions on motivational interviewing, and she's an excellent presenter. We came together and she created this webinar really to address some needs in the community for treatment campuses that were going tobacco-free. So the impetus for this webinar was to help healthcare professionals be able to talk people through smoking cessation, especially if they have a treatment campus that is going tobacco-free. So with that, I'll hand this over to Laura.
All right, thanks, Chris. And welcome to everybody who's on this call. It looks like we're well represented all the way across the United States and up to Alaska as well. So it's super exciting to be here today to share a little bit about what I know about motivational interviewing with all of you. So one thing that I invite you to think about while we're talking today and to always lean into is what you already know about how helpful you can be to people. So right now, you're all really good, skilled helpers who do a lot to help people overcome their ambivalence about changing their behaviors. And you know a lot about that. You know a lot about the people. You know a lot about your practice and your practice world. I don't. I'm not an expert on your people. I'm not an expert on the work that you do. I have some expertise in motivational interviewing. So I'm going to bring that. I want you to bring what you already know. And together, what we can do is we can figure out what about motivational interviewing, maybe specifically for smoking cessation. That will be the behavior change we're using as the example. It can be used across a range of problem behaviors. But what about behavior change? What about this style of helping people change their behavior might be helpful to you in your work? How might it make your work easier? How might it make your work different? And how might it help the people that you so passionately want to help? So that's what we'll be doing. I've been doing motivational interviewing, learning about it, practicing it, studying it, helping others learn motivational interviewing for a couple of decades. I love it. It's been a major addition to my life. It's actually changed the whole way that I approach my career and everything that I do. So I was very fortunate to be voluntold to use it a couple decades ago. So I'm glad to be here today to share what I know about motivational interviewing with you. So again, welcome. This is the Motivational Interviewing for Smoking Cessation, Part 1, just to remind you of that. And so our purpose today is to provide knowledge and some skill practice opportunities to all of you who want to think about using this evidence-based approach, whether you're thinking about using it from the beginning or whether you're thinking about how to enhance those skills. That's what we're going to talk about today. And motivational interviewing, again, it's to help others resolve their ambivalence about changing their behaviors. In these examples that we're going to use today, we're going to use quitting smoking just because that's where the impetus for this came. But again, I'm going to continue to remind you that it can be used for any behavior, thought, or attitude change. When I say provide knowledge and some skill practice, I just want to remind you that when you approach a motivational interviewing training, there's a lot of stuff to learn. There's a lot of stuff to learn, and none of it is particularly complicated. It's fairly simple stuff, and so it's a big decision to decide how wide and or how deep to go. So I've tried to kind of come up with what I think to be the sweet spot on that. So more than likely, there's going to be something that you would have liked to go wider on or maybe go deeper on. And we're going to talk a lot about how you're going to widen and deepen your understanding. So I just randomly kind of picked what I thought, and that may or may not be exactly what you need. So if you could just bring your beginner's mind and say, well, maybe there's something I could learn that would help me be a good helper, that would be wonderful. So our objectives today are to learn about the key concepts in motivational interviewing and how they relate to behavior change. By the end of our time together, being either today or end of our time after the second webinar, I want you to be able to describe the processes of motivational interviewing. What does it mean to engage, to focus, evoke, and plan from a motivational perspective, and how do those things contribute to promoting change? We'll talk a lot about the application of the OR skills for efficient and effective engagement. What we consider those things is we consider those things to be the relational foundation. We're also, even yet today, going to begin to develop our OR skills in a more technical way. We're going to talk about how we use those OR skills to bring change talk out of the people that we're talking to. We're going to evaluate the usefulness of MI for your own practice, so hopefully you'll get enough, hopefully I will have gone wide and or deep enough for you to ascertain whether MI is something you want to pursue, continue to pursue, and increase your understanding so that you can use it to fidelity. And then again, so that's what this is about, is engaging an ongoing learning process to begin your journey of working towards fidelity. So I know I've mentioned a couple times that the examples here are going to be focused on smoking. So that's one of the behavior changes that obviously motivational interviewing is good for talking to people about what or if they want to do about their smoking. But what I want to hear from you, people who are all the way across the country, is what other types of behavior change do you help people change? What other types of behavior change do you work on? You can type into the chat box, and Chris and I will be eager to hear what you have to say, like weight loss, yeah, healthy diet, weight management, prediabetes, health issues, stress, so mental health and physical health, yep. Safe infant sleep, smoking, money stuff, yep, aorta, all of the above, yeah, MAT, relationships, work and school stuff, trauma, yep. Yeah, smoking and vaping. Okay, so you can keep typing in there as you wish. The things that I heard so far is that the things that you work on, the things that the people you work with, the people that you're passionately helping, have issues related to their mental health, their physical health, relationships, work and school, alcohol and other drugs, smoking, money. I didn't hear any legal stuff. Oh, yep, state mandated, yep. So we got some legal stuff as well. And here's the good news. Motivational interviewing has been shown to be effective with all of those things. You can put your blinker on and pull into the motivational lane anytime somebody has ambivalence. You know, I oughta, I could, I should, I want to, but anytime they're having language like that, you can pull into the motivational interviewing lane and it will help the person resolve their ambivalence about all of those things: mental health, physical health, relationships, work, school, IOTA, money, all that stuff. Now, none of you wrote in the chat box that you're going to use motivational interviewing to help a person who has just had an infant and they don't have enough diapers. Right? Do you think if a mom comes to you, now I know that you all do different things, but if a mom, just imagine that a mom came to you and she said, "Helper, I have a baby and my baby doesn't have diapers." Do you think that that mom needs a motivationally based conversation? What do you think? No. Yes, thanks, Robin and Susan. No, and I bet and Sandy, a lot of you are typing no, 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 right? Yeah, so she needs resources. Exactly, Lori. Yeah, it depends on why she doesn't have diapers. True, Georgiana, it could be that she's got some money issues and we'll deal with that later. But in the moment, it's unlikely that that mom is reluctant to diaper that baby, right? She's not saying, well, I could diaper the baby, but sometimes I just like babies to just, freely, poop and pee all over the house, right? Like that's not usually the way that it is, right? So she needs diapers immediately. Yes, Christiana, exactly. She needs some diapers. So then that's not the kind of thing when somebody needs a resource like something as concrete as diapers, that's not a thing that we would do motivational interviewing with. We use motivational interviewing when people are like, yeah, I don't know, but okay, yeah, deal with those immediate needs first. Do your good person-centered helping. Yep, exactly. All right, so you guys have been so participatory so far. Thank you so much. So if somebody is trying to change or is thinking about, or you think they need to change, or someone else says they need to change, or the state says they need to change, or something's going on that change appears to be on the horizon, something that's needed about the way that they're handling their mental health, their physical health, their relationships, their smoking or vaping, their alcohol or their drugs, their money, their legal, their work or school problems, what do they not need? What do they not need to change their behavior? Discouragement, judgment, shoulds. Yeah, shoulds are musts. Answers, ditto, nagging. Lectures, direction. Yep. Fear tactics, feeling bad about themselves, assumptions. Absolutely. Yeah. You got it. Nagging, judgment. So when helping professionals set out to help people, we know that they're not supposed to lecture, install fear, make people feel bad, assume, nag, judge, all that stuff. So what I'm wondering is if you, or you can say, well, maybe the person in the cubby next to me if you don't want to implicate yourself, if you ever find yourself telling people what they should do, why they should do it, how they should do it, and what will happen if they don't. Do you ever find yourself feeling that way a little bit, like kind of sort of telling them a little bit of that? What you should do, why you should do it? Yeah, I want to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You do it sometimes, and the people that share the walls with you, you're tempted to. Yeah. Why are you tempted to do that? You know you shouldn't. Sometimes we do it. We know we shouldn't. why would good, well-meaning practitioners, like all the people on this call, why would you want to do that? Or what would tempt you into doing that? Because it's easier. We have education and training. We want to fix people. Yes, exactly. So here's a little bit of my sort of rant about this. The thing that kind of tempts us to do that is this thing called the Righting Reflex. And the Righting Reflex is this thing that makes us want to have things go right for people. When things aren't right for people, it's not a great experience for us because many of us helpers, probably most of us helpers, were kind of born to help. And the reason that I can go forward and say with that sort of outlandish thing, like, what, we were born to help? Well, if it isn't the truth that we were born to help, how do the rest of the people know that we're the helpers? The rest of the people know we're helpers, right? And how do I know the rest of the people know we're helpers? What do the rest of the people in the world do when we're out in the world and we're just like minding our own business in the grocery line, or we're at the airport, or we're at the party? They ask us for help. They tell us their stuff, don't they? So we're the helpers and everybody knows it. And so what happens when people aren't making their own lives right is that we get real tempted to tell people how they should run their life because it's really painful and awful for us when they're not just doing it themselves. Yeah? Yeah. So we kind of do this. Just do it. I just need you to do this. Yeah. So in order for people, what happens is that it's easy for helping professionals to look at people from a deficit worldview. When you're looking at people from a deficit worldview, what you're doing is you're saying, gosh, I think you're an empty head or an empty glass. And what I really need to do is I need to fill you up with a whole bunch of knowledge and skills and some whys and some hows. And once I kind of fill you up with that, you'll be more full and more ready to go forward and make this change. Well, when we look at people that way, then we take four common approaches. One is that we just try to fill people with insight. If I can just make you see how bad this is, then you'll change. Another one is that we might just say, you know what, I'm going to give you a lot of knowledge. If I tell you how bad this is, if I give you brochures about this, if you have a lot of knowledge about this, that will enable you to change. The other thing we do is we just assume that people need the skill. Like, oh my gosh, this person clearly isn't taking care of their diabetes because they probably just don't have the skill. Now, knowledge and skills play a role in behavior change. They play a role in behavior change at a different point in time than we tend to assume they play a role in behavior change. And so what I want you to do for just a second is I want you to think about knowledge and skills from your own perspective. And so this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to think about the last time you saw your dental hygienist. And I'm going to use the pronoun she for your dental hygienist. If you see a male dental hygienist, go ahead and make the switch of the pronoun, okay? So you're seeing your dental hygienist, and I'm guessing that when you see your dental hygienist, she mentions dental floss. And I'm just going to go way out on a limb from my face-to-face trainings. What I hear over and over again is that people have been told repeatedly by their dental hygienist things about dental flossing. Is that right? Tell me if I'm completely wrong. Otherwise, I'll assume that I'm right. Okay. So, yep. They tell you, oh, there's a hygienist on the line. Yeah, well, we're going to all let you know what about that message. Okay. So the dental hygienist has told you repeatedly what she wants you to do with the dental floss, which means you have the knowledge. Now, there's like a lot of people on here. There's 183 people. And if I asked you to raise your hand if you do what the dental hygienist tells you to do, probably about 5% of the people would raise their hands. That's about what I see in face-to-face trainings, about 5% of people. So 5% of 183, we'd have maybe 10 or 15 people raising their hands, okay? Sandy, you floss. That's good. And so, Annie, you do okay. Good. Yes, and there would be people who do floss, but most of us don't. And so if we were face-to-face, I would say, or maybe we can get that dental hygienist who's a couple of people up there. I can't see her name on my screen anymore. We could put the screen over to her and she could teach us how to floss, right? Because if I'm assuming that you have the knowledge and you're not actually doing it, I might think, well, you just don't have the skill. Well, the reality is that you have both the knowledge and the skill. You know what you're supposed to do, and you know how to floss your teeth. And yet, people don't do it. People don't do it. And yet, how often do we use as an intervention technique to try to get people to change their behavior, either knowledge or skills? And that doesn't really work. And the other thing that we do is we just try to make them feel bad or afraid enough, hoping that they'll change. So knowledge and skills, again, are part of the behavior change process, but they're not part of motivation. And so our job from a motivational standpoint is to get the person motivated, and then in the planning process, talk about how knowledge and skills might be something to enhance their likelihood to change. So there are some traps that well-meaning practitioners fall into when they're trying to help people. And this is totally, again, I mean this earnestly, that they're well-meaning practitioners. So some of these traps to engagement are listed here. So let's just go through them one at a time. So one of the traps that people fall into is the trap that once I've done the assessment and gotten all the information I need from you, I'll be able to fix your problems. And so essentially what we do when we fall into the assessment trap is we over-rely on that information that we got from the assessments that we have to do, those assessments that we have to do to get paid, those assessments that our agencies make us do. Those are an important part of our work, but they're not getting us the information that we need in order to do good motivational interviewing. They're not open enough. They're too pre-prescribed, so they don't tend to help us. Yes, they help us figure out what somebody's problems might be, but we're not really getting a lot of input from the person. The other trap that well-meaning practitioners fall into that kind of promotes disengagement is the expert trap. So that idea, oh my gosh, I can see the writing on the wall, I know exactly what this person should do, and I'm going to this is what I think they should do. The other trap that people fall into is the premature focus trap. So they're listening to a person, they're getting to know the person's revealing kind of what's going on with them, what some of their issues are, and the practitioner just immediately pounces on one of those things, assumes that's enough of the picture, let's fix that one thing, and then everything else will clear up. And that's another trap that it's easy to fall into. There's also the labeling trap. I was just in a workshop last week with some people who work in an academic environment, and one of the administrators in this academic train, they all work at a college, but she was really having a hard time understanding how somebody could fix their problem if they didn't accept the label. And that's a hard thing for some people. Like if the person doesn't say, I am this, I've had this problem, and they're willing to just do the thing that they have to do, sometimes people are confused by that. And they're like, well, don't they have to admit and wear sort of a scarlet letter A saying, I am this person, I've committed this heinous whatever in order to get fixed? And that's not really true of people either. They don't have to accept labels. Another trap that it's easy to fall into is allowing the person to spend all of our consultation time talking about somebody else who's to blame for their problem. That's not useful, right? That person isn't even in the room. We can't spend all of our time talking about somebody else being to blame for somebody's problem. And then finally is the chat trap. And the chat trap is an interesting one, and I think it's one of the ones that people fairly easily fall into. And the chat trap, it comes out of the research of Steve Martino. And what Dr. Martino did is he went into a treatment center, and yes, it is the worst. He went into a treatment center and he trained half of the people in motivational interviewing, and the other half of the people just did their business as usual. Then he invited all of these good treatment counselors to just do their work. Either you've been trained in motivational interviewing, you were just going to do work as usual, and he invited them to audio record all of their sessions. Then he and his staff listened to all of those sessions that they had with people, whether they learned motivational interviewing or not. And what they were looking for is they were looking for the incidences where people chatted. And the way they defined chatted was informal discussions, non-therapeutic, informal discussions about something that didn't have anything to do with the behavior that this person was working on. What he found was, this is not surprising, was that the people who were trained in motivational interviewing were less likely to chat. They were less likely to have non-therapeutic talking about random things. And you say, okay, well, great, who cares? So the motivational interviewers didn't chat. What difference does it make? Well, here's the thing. Chat is associated with a couple things that we do really care about. When we chat at people, they think less of us as a professional. So sometimes it's easy to think like, oh no, if I talk to somebody about gardening when we're supposed to be talking about their substance use, they think I'm a human and it's a way to build rapport. They don't see it that way. They think we're less professional. The other thing is that when we're chatting with them, having just kind of random discussions during their therapeutic time, they are less likely to talk about change. And we're going to talk about this quite a bit, but when people aren't talking about change, they're less likely to change. And so we want to do everything we can to make sure that we're creating an environment where change talk is possible, and chatting doesn't help us establish that kind of environment. The reason that MI saves us from ourselves with the chatting is the intentionality that gets added to your language when you learn motivational interviewing. You can, somebody who's skillful in motivational interviewing and has been practicing it for a while, well, actually even a short while, you can stop them and say, wait, why did you just say what you said? And they'll be able to back it up. They'll be able to say things like, well, I just did a double-sided reflection because the person is clearly caught in some ambivalence here. They've got sustained talk and change talk, and so I did a double-sided reflection where I put the sustained talk first and the change talk second. And that's the kind of thing that people learn in about a 2-day workshop. They're able to do that. So again, by upping your intentionality, it helps you not fall into that chat trap. Okay, so training in motivational interviewing was significantly associated with less informal discussions. Informal discussions are related to less motivation in the client. And there's the citation if you would like to look that study up. Okay, so what do people need to change their behavior? What do they need? We just talked about what people don't need. We talked about the traps that people fall into. But so why don't you chat a little bit, not informal, bad chatting, good chatting. They need motivation. They need a plan. Empathy. Yep, empathy. Visualize their ideal. Support, encouragement, empathy. Person-centered. Confidence. Yes. Reflection, environment change, yes, know what they want, hope, support, self-motivation, yes, support, nice, someone in their corner, someone who understands them. That goes back to that empathy concept, right? Self-efficacy, goal setting, nice. All right, self-compassion, good things, yeah. So yes, people need these things. They need us to listen to them. They need us to be accurate in our expressions of empathy. They need us to be compassionate, to really want to help alleviate their suffering, not fix it for them and yet help them, be a guide. They need support for making their own decisions and acceptance. And that goes with that stuff that you were saying before, like it's anti-MI to judge people or say this, you're bad for having this bad behavior. Absolutely. So that's where motivational interviewing comes in. It is this really nice blend of three styles the three styles, natural styles of communication. In some styles of communication, people are really directing, right? Other styles of communication, we're really, really following, right? We're just sort of wholeheartedly following the person wherever they go. In motivational interviewing, we're saying, you're going to do a little bit of directing because it's your job to keep the person it's your job to move in the direction of change. It's your job to help the person set a focus and to keep the conversation focused on that focus. And yet you're also supposed to follow when you're trying to get to know this person and figuring out, well, what are their dials and levers of change? So when you kind of meld those all together, you get what's called a guiding style. So what exactly, well, I'm just going to stop right there. What questions do you have up to this point before we go into, we've talked about what MI isn't, what doesn't work. We talked a little bit about what you already know, which is quite a bit about what people need in order to change their behavior. So I want to go into some of the more specifics of the definition of motivational interviewing and move on from there. But I'm wondering if you have any questions at this point.
Anyone with questions, it's a good time to type them in on anything Laura's been talking about or what your impressions of MI are.
We've got some people typing. We'll just let those questions pop up here in a second. How to
Laura.
start
Okay.
and finish the conversation without much delay. Yeah, so we'll make sure, so the list of things needed to change behavior, we'll have that, we'll have the slides available, so you'll have that. How do you give medical advice? Okay, so let's talk about medical advice. What was the other one? How do I see all these? Oh, thank you. Okay, so the behavior change list will be in the slides. It'll be available after this webinar, so you can get that there. Sustain and finish the conversation without much delay. So I think I know the answer. I think I know what that question is and so I'll give the answer and we'll see if, and what do you do when the patient starts to go away? Okay, so first, how do you do this without a whole lot of delay or a whole lot of, this is taking forever? There is no dose response requirement for motivational interviewing. No dose response. There's nothing that says we have to do it for 25 minutes at 25 times in order for it to work. As a matter of fact, motivational interviewing was intended to be a brief intervention. And that's why it works. That's one of the reasons that it's so powerful is people like it, that it's brief. And it's one of the things, it's what makes it a powerful tool for experts. So for those of you who do expert, motivational interviewing is key to that as well. But again, there's no requirement for how long or how often you do it. So sometimes at the end of a visit where you've been working on something completely different, maybe you're not using motivational interviewing, or maybe you have to do some kind of an assessment and you only have like 5 minutes left at the end, you could use that time to do motivational interviewing. Right now, you talk to people for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe you get a whole glorious hour. In that time, you use your own style of communication informed by whatever evidence-based practice styles of communication that you use. You can use motivational interviewing for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour. It can be used for any amount of time that you need it to be. So again, if you don't have a lot of time, you might just use it to plant a little seed. And then if you want to give medical advice, we're going to talk, hopefully at the end of the time today, I have a slide in, and we're going to talk about how you give medical advice, give information of any kind in a way that's really partnering with the person. So we absolutely in many situations need to give information, need to give medical advice, but we don't want to do it in a way that it just seems like we're just barfing information all over the person. We want to give it in a way that the person can actually feel in control in it and take it up. And then, what was my next question here? Differences, adolescents versus adults. Yeah, so just a couple of things. When we start talking about reflections, you're going to want to use more complex reflections with adolescents than simple reflections. They tend to be very sensitive to simple reflections. Otherwise, MI works like a rock star with adolescents. It really works really, really well. If you go all the way back to the first edition of Motivational Interviewing that was written in 1991, there's a whole chapter on there, or there's chapters in the subsequent versions as well, but in that first edition of the text, there wasn't a whole lot of research showing that it worked with adolescents. But their supposition was, here's this style of communication. Here's what we know about the adolescent brain and what adolescents are, programmed to do during that period of their life. And they just work beautifully together. The respect for autonomy, the empathy, the, honoring their own decisions, that stuff, still setting, having clear guidelines and boundaries and all that stuff, it works great for adolescents. So there's actually a really good motivational interviewing book. It's called Am I an Adolescent, written by Sylvie Nar King. So if that's a particular area that you're interested in, and I'll have a slide up at the end which will have a picture of that. I will be giving you lots of examples of complex reflections. I'll give you one in response to your question. You're really wondering about how complex reflections are going to benefit you in your work. That was a complex reflection. Okay, and then finally, how does smoking differ from other substances or behaviors? I'm going to show you some evidence in a little bit about how motivational interviewing is equally as powerful in smoking cessation as it is in all of the other behavior changes. At our international conference last year, Bill Miller reminded all of us Motivational Interviewing Network trainers that motivational interviewing continues to win what we call the horse race, right? So when you take motivational interviewing and compare it to other styles of communication, motivational interviewing tends to be out ahead in terms of helping people change their behaviors. As a matter of fact, we're kind of starting, a lot of research isn't running this modality against motivational interviewing because it's just getting kind of repetitive, that motivational interviewing tends to do better. The thing that really impressed me was when he reminded us that motivational interviewing, when added to your other evidence-based styles of communication, both of them do better. So even if you're using, DBT or CBT or something else that you've been trained to use, when you take your motivational interviewing skills and your motivational interviewing spirit and you add it to that, then both of those things do better. So it's pretty powerful stuff. So, okay, good. All right, so let's talk about the definition. So it is a collaborative conversation style for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change. So collaborative. Collaborative means what? Collaborative means together. And that togetherness, that sameness, that equality is really at the heart, is part of the big part of motivational interviewing. I know a lot of stuff and things. I know a lot of stuff and things about, like that example somebody was asking about medical information. Of course I know a lot of medical information. I studied it. I've learned about this. I've had all that stuff. So I know that, but I also at the same time recognize that you have a different need for that, and that your need for my information or my input depends on you. It depends on what you already know. It depends on what you really need from me. I'm not going to give you or assume you need something that I haven't checked with you first, because what you're bringing to our conversation is of equal value to what I'm bringing to our conversation. We are equals. There's no hierarchy in MI. Sometimes I joke and I say there's no I in MI. This is all about the other person. And it's a conversation style, and that's that's in the definition to remind us that when motivational interviewing is being done well, it looks like a smooth flowing conversation. It's not a gimmick, it's not a trick, it's not a technique, it's not some fancy weird thing. It's just a conversation style. It's a way of being with another person who, again, is your partner. And it's for strengthening a person's own motivation. So if I'm talking about strengthening your motivation, I'm assuming something. What am I assuming if I'm saying I'm going to strengthen your motivation? What am I assuming? That it's already there. Yes, yes, that you already have some. Exactly. When you go to the gym and you see a personal trainer, does the personal trainer ever hand you a bicep at the door? Have you ever gone to a gym and the personal trainer gestures over to some basket and says, hey, just pick out a bicep from that. Well, you can use that today while you're here. Yeah, I wish so too, right? But that never happens, right? The personal trainer knows that you already have a bicep. And what it needs is it needs to be strengthened. That's why you're there to see the personal trainer, right? So it's the same thing. We're saying, you know what? I know that you have motivation. I know that you possess personal wisdom and expertise, and that you tend to develop you will develop in a positive direction when you're given the proper conditions and support. And so it's my job as the helper to create that climate where you can strengthen this motivation that I believe you already have. Maybe it's like shrunken down to the size of the Grinch's heart, but I'm going to help you grow it. And then I'm going to help you overcome your stuckness to actually move to the part where you can commit to change. I'm going to help you build up a big old pile of change talk and help you soften your sustained talk, help that stuck talk melt away a little bit so that you can move in the direction of change. So there are 4 processes in motivational interviewing, and the 4 processes, when they came out in the textbook in 2013, they were quite a relief because I think it really helps us teach motivational interviewing better, and I think it really makes it much more accessible for you as a practitioner. I think it helps you recognize what you're doing already that kind of maps onto motivational interviewing and how motivational interviewing perhaps differs a little bit from that which you're already doing. So engaging, we consider that the relational foundation, and that's the platform upon which everything else sets. Just like in a house, if that relational foundation is a little bit, got some cracks in it and not very solid, none of the other stuff can happen with any sort of integrity or likelihood to produce change. So we pay a lot of attention to that relational foundation. Right when we start talking to people, we are going to start talking to them from a perspective of, you are my partner. We are equal. You have, I'm going to support your autonomy, you have choice in whether or not you quit smoking or not. This is your decision. And I'm going to do that from a position of empathy. I'm going to recognize that of course you have some stuckness. Of course you have some things about this change that you really want, while at the same time you have some things that you don't. And I'm going to work really hard to use my OR skills to express those things to you so that you know that I'm working really, really hard to understand you. I'm using my OR skills in that following way as I'm just trying to get to know you. And in that engaging process where I'm trying to get to know you, what I'm definitely doing is I'm not rushing in to fix anything. I'm taming that righting reflex, that thing that's inside me that makes me want to go around fixing everybody. I'm going to just say, I know I really want to do that. I'm going to sit on that for a second. And so once I figure that out, essentially the shorthanded job of engaging is to figure out who is this person and then what might be the possible things we could talk about. Focusing is where you and the person that you're working with pick what the target behavior is. Because during that who, you could have found out that there's like 6 target behaviors. You could be talking to a single person who's got issues with mental health, physical health, they smoke, they're drinking, and that's causing them some problems. They got relationship problems, and they're having some problems at work, right? It's not unusual that somebody would have that many issues going on all at once. And so focusing says either you pick it, they pick it, or you pick it together, but one of you pick a targeted behavior. And it's important that you pick a targeted behavior because in evoking, you're figuring out the why of fixing that particular behavior. So you can't figure out the why for all of those things because all of those things might have different whys. So you're saying in this section of the conversation, we're talking about smoking, and then I'm going to solicit this person's why. Why might they want to change it? And I am going to be totally open to whatever it is, whatever their dials and levers of change. When I've gotten enough why, when I've had enough, when I've spent enough time in this, Then I am going to move to the how. I'm going to move to the planning. But I have to make sure I've really spent some time working on the why. So when I first start talking to people, when I first start coaching them in motivational interviewing, oftentimes in the beginning, you know, people will do quite well with engaging, right? Like people, you're good at practitioners, right? You're going around in the world and you know how to engage with people. So I hear them engaging. And, you know, they learn the skills of how to show partnership and how to support autonomy and be empathic, and they get all that. And so they're working on that, and I can usually tell what they're talking about, right? They pick a topic. Good helping professionals are pretty good with that. And so after they do who are you and what should we talk about, where do you think they go? New people, people new to this. What do you think they do? Who are you? What should we talk about? And then where do they jump? Who are you? What should we talk about? How should we fix it? Who are you? What should we talk about? How are we going to fix it? Who are you? What's wrong? How am I going to fix it, right? And so they skip this really important part. It's not unusual that people skip that, and it's not even surprising because, quite frankly, evoking is really hard work. This is the hardest part, and it's the part that's most unusual and most unlike other styles of communication. It is also the part that helps behavior change stick. Because what we know is that when the why has heart, the how has legs. So when we get people to have a strong why, they're going to persist more through their when the how gets tough. Okay, so if I'm leading with a strong why, I will work harder on the how. So here's a cute little short video that illustrates this really nicely. So I'll just let you enjoy this for a second.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm going to show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor. Can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I like that example too. Yeah. Yep. And Michael Jr. is awesome, isn't he? Yes. All right. So again, when the why to change is motivational interviewing, the how to change, that knowledge and that skill stuff and all that really good information that you have, that how to change stuff is part of the planning process. And so it's all good stuff. What we want to do is we want to get this person's internal flame really lit and just like have a lot of fuel on that fire so that when it's time to do the how, then they're more open to trying it, they're going to devote more energy, and they're going to exhibit more persistence during the how. So just a little, oh, are people not able to hear? Yeah, okay, good. All right, just a little evidence on MI for smoking. I'm not going to take much time on this. Just this slide, I use this all the time. I think this is pretty impactful. So if you look at this study that was done and published in JAMA in 2004, this study, basically what they looked at is what makes people sick and causes them to die. And as healthcare people, my guess is that you're not surprised by these categories. So heart disease, 27%, cancer 23%, stroke, lung disease, injury, and other is all the other categories that were too tiny to divide up, right? That's what that causes people to get sick and die. Well then, 3 years later, an article that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine looked at that article, but then took it a step further and said, well, what is the cause of those things? So lack of access to health care, I know that's not surprising to most of you, accounts for 10%. Hereditary accounts for about 30% of sickness and death. Environment and social factors, 20%. People's lack of access to health care and all that other stuff. Living in poverty, we know that those, yes, morbidities, yes. So those are morbidities, not behaviors. But then look at the behaviors, or look at what portion of the pie behaviors is. 40%. So 40% of what causes people to get sick and die is behaviors. And so it would make sense that we would spend 40% of our training when we're trying to get ready to be mental health or physical health practitioners, that we would have all kinds of skills to help people change their behaviors. And yet, we don't. And so it's a place where we can really make a difference. So just a little bit about MI for smoking cessation. In a 31 controlled trial meta-analysis, MI significantly outperformed comparison conditions at a long-term follow-up points. The effects were slightly smaller among pregnant samples. Pregnant samples tend to have their own motivators and be put in a different group. Here's some other things. I'm not going to read all these to you. You'll have the slides, so you'll be able to go back and look at this again, but it appears to be more helpful to people. It helps them quit smoking better than just brief advice or usual care when it's provided by general practitioners and change counselors. I think this is important. Shorter motivational interviewing sessions, less than 20 minutes per session, were more effective than longer sessions. So again, it's that intentionality. It's being really strategic with what it is that we're saying, not dragging it out. People don't want to talk about their smoking for hours and hours. And a single session of treatment appeared to be marginally more successful than multiple sessions, but both delivered successful outcomes. So here's just some more stuff. Several subgroups of studies had significant combined effect sizes, promising applications of MI, including people living outside the U.S., adolescents, those with medical comorbidities, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is, motivational interviewing works pretty well for smoking cessation. Again, it's for the resolution of ambivalence, it's kind of the bomb. So what I want to talk about now, I want to just spend a few minutes talking about the spirit of motivational interviewing. And we're going to do that before we start talking about the words that we use in motivational interviewing. The words that we use in motivational interviewing are really, really important. But if we just teach you the words come out in a way that doesn't sound anything like motivational interviewing. So it's worth us spending just a few minutes talking about what your head and your heart and your gut need to believe about people in order to pull off this thing called motivational interviewing. So, I just want to go back to this for a second. There's, like everything else in motivational interviewing, there is a mnemonic to help you remember what the spirit of motivational interviewing, and here it is. It's PACE: partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. So partnership. So partnership is where you acknowledge that you are in a partnership, where you pay special attention as the practitioner to the fact that, well, you know a whole bunch of stuff, so do they. That you don't know more or better stuff than they do. You're both in this together. You're going to also seek their collaboration. You're going to very strategically ask them about things that they might want to do in the conversation. Are they interested in a particular piece of information from you? Are they ready to talk about this? Is this a good topic to be spending your time talking about? Again, you're not the only one in the conversation making decisions. You are in a partnership with them. You're seeking their collaboration. And then to also show partnership, you're going to remind them in genuine ways that they get to make the ultimate decision. So whether or not you quit smoking is really up to you. Today we can brainstorm all kinds of things about how you might decide to quit smoking or how that might work for you if you did decide to quit smoking. And then the one that you pick is going to genuinely be up to you. You know what will work for you. So looking for opportunities to reinforce autonomy with the person. And then another element of spirit, the A in PACE, stands for acceptance. And there are 4 components of that which also handily all start with A. So the first one is absolute worth. And when we're respecting somebody's absolute worth, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that no matter who they are and what they've done, they are worthy. They are worthy of our help. They are worthy of our acceptance. And then we're going to look for opportunities to affirm them. And we're going to work on affirmations next time in part 2. But affirmations are genuine recognitions of somebody's genuine descriptions of what somebody's strengths, values, or achievements are. They're very deliberately not compliments, not us evaluating somebody by saying, like, I'm so proud of you, you're a rock star. That stuff actually erodes the sense of partnership, so we try to avoid that. Instead, we say things like, the way that you all showed up here today and are dedicating 90 minutes of your professional time shows that you're the kind of professional who really wants to be on the cutting edge of evidence-based practices. I just affirmed you. And then accurate empathy is about really sitting and really listening to people so that you can really understand their perspective. It's not necessarily you wearing around people's emotions or actually feeling them yourself, but you're trying to put yourself in their shoes and truly, truly imagine what it's like to be in their shoes and then reflect that back to them. And then finally, an element of acceptance is autonomy. And again, that's where you take the time to remind them that they're in charge. Compassion is simply seeking to alleviate the suffering of other people. My guess is that you do compassionate things all day, every day. You do lots of work coming from the perspective of, I see people suffering and I don't want them to be, and I'm going to help them. And then evocation, when we are evocative, we are getting our curious on. We are truly open to what might a person's dials and levers of change be. Sometimes their dials and levers of change are not identical to what ours are, or what the person that we just saw. Oh my gosh, these people seem to have a lot in common. Their dials and levers of change must be the same. They might be, they might not be. We're open and curious and truly there to help this person sort out what their dials and levers of change might truly be. So what I want to do next, we're going to do a little exercise here. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think about whether you put your thumb up or your thumb down, and you can type it in if you want. So here's what we're going to do. If the practitioner in each of these scenarios is using the spirit of motivational interviewing, based on the little bit we just talked about it, we were pretty quick with that conversation. But if you think that that practitioner is demonstrating motivational interviewing, you're going to give them a thumbs up. You don't even need me to read it. Yeah, you're going to give them a thumbs up. If they're not, it's thumbs down. So if the patient says, I just can't think about all this, sometimes I just want to throw in the towel and do what I've always done, drink and smoke to deal with all this stress. But there's another part of me that knows if I don't do something about this, I could die. You can do this. You've got to. Yeah, there isn't a single one of you who thinks this person is, cheerleading, not tapping into motivation, down, 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 using guilt. Okay, great. All right, very good. And just to foreshadow another part of this, what is this person definitely missing? What are they missing here? We've talked a little bit about change, and what is this person missing? The motivation, the why, absolutely. Yep, so you got it right, the thumbs down. Okay, I can't believe that everyone is on my back about this. First they get all up in my business about drinking, and now smoking. And now smoking, it's not surprising that they are worried about you. Why wouldn't they be? Yeah, still no. This poor person, they're not getting it, are they? No empathy. Thumbs down. Thumbs down. Yep, you got it. Thumbs down. All right, one last one here. I can't believe that everyone's on my back about this. First they get up all up in my business about drinking and now smoking. You're feeling like everyone's ganging up on you. Yay! I think they took a lot of your feedback and they seem to be getting it. Yay for empathy, finally, yes. Affirming their feelings. Good, good. Exactly, thumbs up. So again, and there's lots more we can talk about with the spirit of motivational interviewing. It might be something that you want to brush up on, learn more about. It tends to be the thing when there's issues with what you believe your role to be, what you believe about what this person needs from you. When those things aren't in keeping with partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation, that's where practitioners get into a little bit of trouble because they're being guided by kind of like the wrong force. And even though they're using open questions or affirming or trying to affirm or reflect, it comes out in this way that it just doesn't sound like motivational interviewing. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. If you type into YouTube motivational interviewing, a bunch of stuff will pop up. Sometimes you're watching it and you're like, yeah, that seems like pretty good. I like that. Other times you might be watching it and think, this is giving me a stomachache. And it might be because, well, first of all, anybody can put anything on YouTube. And secondly, it might be because they're just not quite, they just don't have all the elements of spirit and they're just demonstrating kind of the mechanics, the open-ended stuff. But it's coming from a place that just doesn't fit. So, all right. So what I want to talk about now is one of the key concepts in motivational interviewing, which is ambivalence. And as we think about ambivalence, what I'm going to ask you to do here for a second is I'm going to ask you to take this little 2x2 table here and just write it out on a piece of paper or just stare at it or whatever. But I want you to think about your own behavior, thought, or attitude change. So given that I'm pretty sure everybody on the call is a mere mortal, that we don't have any magical people or saints or anything else on this call, that you all have behavior, thoughts, or attitude changes that you yourself have grappled with. And I'm not going to ask you what it is. You're not going to have to type it into the chat box or anything. You can write about any behavior, thought, or attitude change that you've ever grappled with. And what I want you to do is I just want you to consider it from these 4 directions. I want you to write down or think about what the benefits to not changing your behavior are, what your concerns are about not changing your behavior, what your concerns are about changing your own behavior, and what you would see the benefits of changing your behavior. Yes, you could pick flossing your teeth if you wanted. That would be a good one. So just for a minute, just jot a few things down. Benefits to no change, concerns to no change, concerns to change, and benefits to change. I'm just going to give you like a minute. All right, well, you can certainly keep working on your list as long as you want. What I want to hear from you now is what you notice about your list. As you look down at what you wrote in each of those 4 quadrants, what do you notice? Not the specifics of what you notice, but what patterns do you notice? What do you notice about what you wrote in those categories? Yep, the benefits of one, yep, it created an X. There's more stuff on the right side. Yep. You had more stuff. There's fear of change, difficult to list the benefits of not changing. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of that. Why am I doing this behavior? Right. Yep. Okay. So if I were privileged enough to be having a conversation with you, whether it was getting enough exercise or flossing or eating enough kale, whatever your behavior, thought, or attitude change is, and I got to have a conversation with you about it, it's likely that in that conversation you would kind of organically mention the benefits to not changing, the concerns of not changing, the concerns of changing, and the benefits of changing. Like that's the kind of stuff that people just talk about when they're talking about grappling with behavior change, when they're stuck about their behavior change. So if I was listening to that, if I was your helper and I was just listening, which of the 4 quadrants would give me hope, would give me the sense that you had some kind of a lean in the direction of change? Would you be in the quadrant of the benefits to no change, the concerns to no change, the concerns to change, or the benefits to change? The benefits of change, definitely. And the concerns to no change. You got it. You got it. That stuff would be the stuff that would make me happy. It makes me happy, and it makes the science of motivational interviewing happy, and so we've named it something. We've named Talk About Change. This is very complicated. Talk About Change is called Change Talk. And what we know about Change Talk is that it's motivational gold. We know that it's the stuff that helps people move in the direction of change. So it's our job to create a climate where people can talk about the concerns for not changing and the benefits to change. Now, we're not deluded. We know that there's this other stuff on the other side, and so we've named that as well, and we call that sustained talk, and that's stuck talk. Ambivalence is people having stuff on both sides of the equation, and in motivational interviewing, we not only recognize that it's there, but we, excuse me, I'm just going to go back here, we recognize that it's normal. It is normal for people to have both things. If they didn't have sustained talk, if they only had change talk, guess what they would have already done? What would they have already done? If you only had change talk, you didn't have any sustained talk, you would have just gone ahead and made the change. You would have changed, right? You don't need to be having a conversation about it. You would have just changed. Exactly. So just a little bit more about change talk. Change talk is the person's argument, the other person or the client, whatever you want to call them. It's their own arguments for doing or not doing something. It's their desires to do something. It's their abilities, their reasons, their needs, or maybe their commitment towards doing this. It's their expression. So they'll say things about what they want or they wish, what they can, their reasons. I need to, I ought to, I got to. I'm gonna, I promise, I absolutely will do this. That's change talk. Now, sustained talk, that other side, sounds the same. It doesn't sound exactly the same, it's that it can use those same words. People will talk about what they want. I want to keep drinking. I want to keep smoking. I want to only eat lollipops, right? They'll talk about their abilities, maybe in the form of I can't do this, there's no way I can make this happen. They might have their reasons. I have to do this because it's how I stay connected to my peeps. If I drink like this, use like this, only eat lollipops all day, whatever it is. Or their needs. I need to use marijuana. It's how I deal with my stress. And so sustained talk can use some of those same words, but it's talk moving in the direction of stuck, not talk moving in the direction of change. And so what our job as a motivational interviewer is to help people to be empathic to their sustain, to say like, okay, yeah, you got sustain, that's normal, while at the same time helping them move in the direction of change. And so what we're going to do now for our remaining 15 minutes is we're going to employ one of our OR skills, and with this one OR skill, we're going to talk about how we can help people move from change to sustain. And the OR skill that we're going to start with is the most important OR skill, which is reflective listening. Reflective listening is the OR skill that you can't do motivational interviewing without. You can get through a whole lot of pretty powerful motivational interviewing without an open question, and you could get pretty far without any affirmations, and you might not be using a lot of summaries, but you can't get very far. You're not going to get much traction if you're not using your skill of reflective listening. And so what reflective listening does is it mirrors back what the other person said or meant. It's going to encourage the person to say more, feel heard and understood. You're going to be able, when you get good at reflective listening, when you sharpen up your skills, if you've already got them, you're going to be able to shape the direction of the conversation. And the cool thing about reflections is you can't hurt people by reflecting on what they said, because the content is coming from the person. That's where the spirit of motivational interviewing is really, really important. You could hurt somebody reflecting if it didn't have the spirit of motivational interviewing behind it. So just a couple of basics about reflective listening, a couple of reminders for those of you who already know something about motivational interviewing. We want our voice inflection to stay down. We want what we say to be fairly concise. Oftentimes when people are learning reflections, they have what they should say in the first sentence, and then they just add all this other stuff to the end. And what I usually say to them is, you had me at hello. Just say your first bit and just consider that good enough. And they're really strategic, right? Reflections can encourage change talk. They can soften sustain talk. We're going to talk next time about how reflections can help you deal with discordance in your relationships, and they can help you show empathy. So another couple things about reflections in general. We want to reflect more than we ask questions. Ideally, when we're getting really good at motivational interviewing, we want about 2 reflections or more for every question, and we want our reflections to be both simple and complex. I'll take this time to remind you that simple reflection says it's the word simple. It's not the word simpleton. Simple means that's pretty much what the person said, and I'm saying back to them pretty much what they said. Sometimes I strategically pick that because what the person said was powerful enough, and by me repeating it, they heard themselves say it. They heard me repeat it. It really helps drill it in. I see that simple reflections are perhaps one of the most underused skills when people are learning motivational interviewing. When you don't know what else to say, you don't know where to go next, use a simple reflection and it will give you a moment. The person will keep talking and you can strategically pick what thing you want to do next. So don't underestimate the power of a simple reflection. So if we're going to use our reflections to cultivate change talk, we're going to use them in a very strategic way. There are a number of different kinds of reflections that help us do that. And so what I want to do with our last 15 minutes, we're going to practice with these different kinds of reflections. We're going to use them to cultivate change talk. And then we're also going to talk about how you soften up sustain talk with this skill of reflective listening, and I'm going to leave you with the challenge to try some of this in the week between session 1 and session 2 and see what happens, okay? So the first one. So if somebody says, I'd like to quit smoking, I have no idea how to quit, but I know that I'd really like to, okay? Their change talk is highlighted in green. It's the I'd like to. That's their change talk. And so to simply reflect their change talk, all I did was say what they said. You'd like to quit smoking. So imagine saying that to somebody. I'd like to quit smoking. I have no idea how to quit, but I know that I'd really like to. And when people haven't learned motivational interviewing, it's a simple reflection. Yep, exactly. When they haven't learned motivational interviewing, sometimes their desire to fix has them wanting to delve into the I have no idea how to quit part instead of going for the change. So let's move to the next one. So Chris, if you want to read the patient line, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'd like to quit smoking. I have no idea how to quit, but I know that I'd really like to.
Okay, so it's that same patient statement, but what we're going to do now is we're going to use a reflection style called double-sided. So what I would say is, if you could come up with a way to quit, you'd like to quit smoking. And so what I did there, what do you notice about what I did there? Because it's not exactly, Chris, read what you said again. Read your patient statement.
So I said, I'd like to quit smoking. I have no idea how to quit, but I know that I'd really like to.
Yeah. If you could come up with a way to quit, you'd like to quit smoking. Yes, I framed it positively, and I capitalized on her desire to quit. Exactly. So in a double-sided reflection, yes, I did also move it forward. Very good, Elizabeth. You can teach the next session. That's very clever. Because she didn't have a lot of change language, so I had to loan her a little bit there. So if the conversation I'm having with Elizabeth makes you feel like your hair is going to start on fire, just ignore us for a second. Okay. So yeah. So I put her stuck talk first, right? If you could come up with a way to quit, you'd like to quit smoking, right? Because I don't want to end with the stuck talk. And yes, I did give her some autonomy too. Well, thank you for noticing. Okay. Starting to move her towards the solution. Exactly. Okay, so let's do the next one. All right, Chris, what do you got?
All right, I'd like to quit smoking. I have no idea how to quit, but I know that I'd really like to.
And so I said, you're looking for a key to open that locked door. So what I'm trying to do is create a picture for Chris of what's happening. When we create those kind of pictures, that just helps people think of things in a different way. You're looking for a key to open that locked door. I'm not even sure that's that good a one, but that's the one I could think of off the top of my head. Could you say you're looking for a way to get started? You could, Lisa, that's a really good forward-moving reflection. It's just not, it wouldn't count as a metaphor. It's a very good, could you say you're looking for a way to get, yeah. You're looking for a way to get started. You're looking for a key to open that locked door. That's a metaphor. Yep. Yes, I think everyone wants to see what's behind a locked door. Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's think about how we can use this same skill of reflecting, which is saying what the person said, saying it in the same way or saying it in a different way to help soften the sustained language. So our job is to try to get the sustained language to melt away. To not say, oh, I'm ignoring your sustained language. Your sustained language is stupid, because it's not. It's their real stuff. Remember, if they only had change, they would have already made change without us. They don't need us if they only have change language. But when they have sustained talk, that's the thing that we want to help them deal with it. We want to be empathic to it, but we don't want to dwell on it. When we dwell on it, it's akin to, here's a metaphor, it's like we see a person drowning in a pool and we jump in with them. And now we're both drowning instead of throwing them a life preserver. Okay, so, and this is a tough thing for helpers because we want to fix, okay? So let's look at some examples of how reflective listening can help us soften that sustained language. So the patient says, Chris?
I don't want to quit smoking. It's really the only thing I have left. The only thing I have left that's just for me.
Thank you for filling in words that are missing. Yeah, you don't want to quit smoking, and you have some way to take care of yourself. So there, I gave her back her I don't want to quit smoking, right? So I said it first. You don't want to quit smoking. On the one hand, you don't want to quit smoking. Here's some empathy towards where your stuckness, and you want some way to take care of yourself. So putting those two things together. Another thing important about double-sided that I forgot to mention when we were in the change example is that you want to be really careful about what you use to join. So if you're going to use, if the client says, she didn't actually say but in this sentence, but if she had, I wouldn't use but here. I very intentionally use the conjunction and. Because if I'm going to all the trouble to do a double-sided reflection, I want to give them equal weight. I'm giving them unequal weight already by putting the change language second, so I don't want to use a but here because I don't want to negate the fact that I see that she's got some stuck. I don't want to just say like, I love you, but I'm leaving you, right? When we do that, it's yes, use the buts sparingly. Yes, exactly. So here's another strategy for softening the sustained talk. It's a kind of reflection that helps us help the person soften up or help their sustained talk disappear. So go ahead, Chris.
I don't want to quit smoking. It's really the only thing I have left, the only thing I have that's just for me.
Yeah, you want to have something that's for you. So there, I just took Chris's sustained talk and I came alongside it. I just stood there with it. I just said, okay, you got this. I'm not going to pull. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to try to make you move anywhere right now. Right now, I'm going to just stand still with you. And the thought about that is that it might just give Chris enough of a break, right? It just, when I'm not pushing or pulling and I'm accepting, yeah, then that gives Chris the space to think about moving to the change side, right? If I'm always all over the change side and pulling and pulling and pulling and over-occupying the change side, what Chris is more likely to do is she's like, get away, like that you're pushing harder than I want to be pushed or pulled, and so I'm going to retaliate and go over to the sustain side and dig a trench. I'm going to build a condominium on the sustain side, and I don't want to do anything that's going to have Chris doing that, Chris in the client role. And then finally, I want to show you how feeling reflections can help soften the sustained talk. So Chris, go ahead.
I don't want to quit smoking. It's really the only thing I have left, the only thing I have that's just for me.
You're feeling like you're giving more than you're getting. And so that works because, again, it's sort of that same thing, is I want Chris to know that I heard her, that I'm empathic with her stuck. It's cool that you're stuck, Chris. It's okay. I'm just going to rest for a minute. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to do that throughout a long session, like over and over and over again. Because what's going to happen is Chris is going to stay stuck. So I want to judiciously show her that I get her stuckness, and then I also want to look for opportunities to help move beyond that stuckness. Does that make sense? So it's, yes, I see that you're stuck. I want to acknowledge that, but I'm not going to do that 53 times in a row. I'm going to look for opportunities to kind of help gently move you along. So I have some, one more, amplification. Go, Chris.
I don't want to quit smoking. It's really the only thing I have left, the only thing I have that's just for me.
Smoking is the only thing you have to take care of yourself. So what am I hoping by saying it that way? Smoking is the only thing that you have to take care of yourself. Yes. Maybe they have other things. Makes her realize she's yes. So what I'm doing is I'm doubling down on her sustained language. I'm kind of pushing on it a little bit. And what do I hope Chris will say? Chris, what am I hoping you'll say? Smoking is the only thing. Yeah. Well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it work every time? Is that going to work every single time?
No.
With every single smoker, is that going to work every single time? Are they going to argue against me? No. But you know what it does? It just shows me that this person has got some way to go. It just shows me that they're pretty stuck, right? And it's like, okay, that's okay. You're pretty stuck. We got some work to do. Okay, so what I have next, so for our last 4 minutes, we're going to do this one together. And then there's 2 more. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at them before next time and see what you think of them. Okay, so we're going to do one together, then there's two more, and you can take a look at those two more before we come back together next time. And that's how we'll start out next time. We'll review those, and that'll get us right back to where we're starting from. So take a look at this, and now and then look at what do you think is the best reflection given that this is the client statement. I don't think you understand. I don't have anything that calms me down like a few smokes before I fall asleep. I need to smoke or I'll be up all night. Nobody's picking one or two.
You got one on number one.
Okay. So, just in the interest of time, those of you who picked number 3, that is the reflection that is most likely to result in change. Number 4 is not wrong. Number 4 is empathic. Okay? So number 4 is empathic. And you know what? I didn't tell you what you're picking for. I should have said if you want to move in the direction of change. So number 4 is empathic. Number 2, none of you picked that. Okay? That is obviously, that's a closed question and is going nowhere. Have you tried to just stop doing it? And then number 1, somebody wrote in the chat box, I thought about number 1, but it includes they're not good for me, and that seems a little judgmental. Yeah, I agree. So if you just go flat out with the, I'm going to try to avoid the I and am I, then that one is a good way to kind of think about that one not being so good. I do understand I have things that I like to do, but I know they aren't good for me. I do understand is probably not likely to result in a lot of empathy or joining. People don't necessarily have the same experiences or problems that we do, and so telling them our story or trying to join on me too kind of stuff isn't usually as effective. We want to be more person-centered. So I invite you to do yes, it changes the emphasis to the helper. Exactly, Robin. Yes, very good. So I invite you to look at the next 2 and to think about why you would pick your answer, because this is about being really intentional. And then the other thing that I invite you to do between now and next time is to try a little reflecting, to try to hear anything, any of your clients, members, consumers, customers, the people you work with, hearing their language that has that lean in the direction of change. Things that favor them changing their behavior, hear that, and then just reflect it. Just hear it. Just hear, I want to, I could, I ought to, here are my reasons, I need to. Hear that and then try to reflect it and come back ready to just talk about that a little bit and to continue on with our journey. So that's our time, and I look forward to talking to all of you next week. Talk soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.